One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
Go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
We're excited to welcome our guest today, and we're just going to get right to it because this is Christine. Christine, tell us who you are. Tell us more.
I am Christine, and I live in Southern Ontario, Canada, in the wilds of Canada.
We've had so many Canadians.
We love Canada.
We like talking about our pain and sorrow, I guess.
Are there more dead people in Canada? I don't think so.
I guess, yeah, possibly. Not sure. You're hit by a moose or something. We have those kinds of stories in Canada.
I see moose all the time. They're like strangely always there for me. Anyway, but I've never been hit by one.
I'd like to meet a widow that became widowed by getting hit by a moose because I know it's not funny, but it's definitely unique.
It's a great cocktail party story, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet there are people who've like hit a moose in their car and but like,
oh, yeah.
you want like a full moose on pedestrian
charge.
Yeah. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's actually happened to anybody. Okay. Sorry, Christine. You live in Southern Ontario.
I live in a small town on the St. Lawrence River, and I met my husband in 1997, so 1,000 years ago, and we were introduced by a set of mutual colleagues. So he worked with the husband and I worked with the wife, and I was not interested at all in meeting somebody, but we ended up both getting invited to dinner in a sort of conspiratory way.
It was an intervention date kind of a thing.
It was an intervention. Yeah. And despite me not wanting to be involved, I was engaged and had bought a house with him within 5 months. So I didn't do very well at resisting.
Why were you not interested just like in the idea of dating anybody, or was it him in particular?
Kind of a little of both. I had come out of a long-term relationship and I thought I should probably be alone for a while and, figure things out and not jump into some new thing. And also he was kind of all wrong for me. Wrong age, it's quite a bit older, and he was from a completely different background than I was. And he was like Mr. Daredevil, professional skydiver, scuba diver. And I'm like, I like books and staying inside. It was really a case of like, what am I going to have in common with this person? But after the dinner that we had with kids there and stuff, like their kids, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and he and I were sitting on the ends of one couch, and I kept reaching over to touch him, like touch his leg or touch his arm. And like, I didn't actually touch him, but I kept thinking like, whoa, you don't know this person. But I had this sort of constant, had to pull my hand back or restrain myself. So there was some sort of connection.
Magnetism. He was magnetism, you.
Right away. So yeah, as I said, at the beginning I said, he was like, I want to go on a date. And I said, well, I'm really not interested at the moment in a romantic relationship. Oh, that's fine. He said, no worries. We'll just be friends. And like I said, 5 months later, we were engaged and had bought a house. And then we married a year after that. So in 1998, we got married. And so we were married for a long time. And it was a great, great time. We had lots and lots of fun together and no kids to make it better or make it worse. So it was all about the two of us.
How old were you when you two met?
I was 27.
Okay. And how old was he?
Yeah. He was 42.
Okay.
So it was actually funny because I was sort of aghast when I found out how old he was, because I have very young parents. So he was only 7 years younger than my dad. So he was more of a contemporary of my dad than he was of me. But he was a very young 42-year-old, super athletic, super fit.
Does that mean immature?
No.
Fun loving.
No. He had his stuff together, but
Okay.
Yeah. I get it. I have friends like that.
I think you're that, Mel, too.
I'm also that. Yeah.
Yeah. What was this fella's name?
Michael. And he was not Mike. My dad's name is actually Mike. So a lot of people try to call him Mike, but he decided in his, I think, late 30s that he'd always allowed people to call him Mike, and he actually wanted to be called Michael. So he started insisting that his name was Michael.
What was Michael's career?
So he did all kinds of things, but he was in the military for the last 20 years of his career, and 10 years in the Army and 10 years in the Air Force. And as I said, he was a military skydiver. So he jumped out of actual skydiving.
When you said professional, you were not joking.
No. So jumped out of lots and lots of planes, did all the fancy formations and the shows, the air shows and things where they dive and do all that sort of stuff. It was absolutely his favorite thing to do in the whole world. But they limit how long you can do that in the military because it's such a fun job.
Oh.
So of course they don't want you to have too much fun forever. So then he finished his career in search and rescue. He worked on search and rescue helicopters. So he was just getting out of the military when I met him. There was a reduction plan with the military, so he had taken like a buyout package for that and decided to leave the military at that point. And I remember him saying, because my dad was a professor is a professor at a military college, and was originally in the Army a long time ago. And Michael said to me, "Oh, your dad's an officer and I'm a soldier. This is never going to work." So it did, but I thought that was pretty funny.
How did your family feel about him being so much older than you?
I think it was disconcerting for them at first. So they had to meet him quite a few times. And Michael was the kind of person, I called him a turtle. He had a very hard outer shell, partly because of his difficult background, but he was very soft and squishy inside. So you just had to kind of permeate the hard shell. And he was the most honorable, considerate person I've ever met in my whole life. So my parents started to see those things and realized, okay, this is, we can't judge this book by its cover. And now that we know more about him, he's way better than our daughter.
We can't judge this turtle by his shell.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they want to keep him and kick you out? He was so great.
Yeah, it kind of felt like that sometimes.
So you mentioned he had a difficult background. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so he grew up in Northern Ontario, so it was cold and wintry more than in Southern Ontario. And he grew up in poverty and in a little kind of shack. And his parents had 5 children. Michael was 7 years old, and he had 4 younger siblings. So lots of kids in a short period of time. And his dad went in for a tonsillectomy. You might remember this story.
No.
Stop it.
Yeah. And he was fine after the surgery. And then his mom said she went to see him the next morning and he had died.
Stop it. Okay, well, now I've met somebody on the podcast that's happened to. Oh my gosh.
You didn't get your moose, but you got your tonsillectomy, Mel.
I'll take that today. Wow.
Yeah. Oh. So there she is. She's in a small town. Her parents had 14 children. And so they couldn't really help much. And, she was a seamstress kind of. So she had to kind of honestly get married as quickly as possible. She married a guy that was sort of a buddy of her husband's, a wartime buddy, but they didn't really know each other. And he turned out to be not a good guy. So then they were living in an abusive situation. And Michael tried to be the kind of sort of barrier between himself and his younger siblings as the oldest kid.
Right.
So anyway, long story short, he was removed, put into foster care, was abused more there, kept running away because he was getting abused. And then in those days, they charged you with truancy as if you weren't going to school, even though he was going to school. And so he was sentenced to a residential reform school, hours away from his house, where there were, he's like 11, and there are boys that are way bigger than he is and way better fed than he was, as well as priests that were very abusive physically and sexually. So he had a very difficult time there as well. And then when they released him, he was sort of 12 and a half. They said, your mother has too many children, so you better not go home. So he went back to his little village, but he didn't go back home. He went and lived under a railroad trestle bridge for an entire winter by himself.
What do you
freezing
12?
And starving, yeah, with untreated physical and sexual abuse injuries. So he had a really awful, awful childhood.
I know why he wanted to jump out of airplanes now.
Yeah. Yeah. And he used to actually say, he said to me, when I was a child and I was in these horrible situations, I used to go out of my body and fly up out of my house and fly over the town and into the clouds and just fly around until whatever it was over. And that was how I escaped. So the fact that he got to be a skydiver and jump and fly on his own terms was incredibly poignant.
The dissociation, that's common. That's what happens when children are abused. They go out of their body and as a way to escape.
Yeah. So we had very different upbringings, and he managed to, pull his life together. He left his small town and made a life for himself.
Yeah. At the ripe age of 13.
Yeah.
Holy cow. When you met him, obviously you didn't know any of this, right? Like he was just another face. What was your reaction? Did he give this to you all at once, or did you learn it over a period of time?
Hey guys, just checking in and want to say, if you are enjoying this podcast
and you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
Some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I think.
I think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Back to our regularly scheduled program.
I'm trying to remember. I think it sort of came out in dribs and drabs. Initially, what he would say to everybody, if we were talking about, he didn't have books as a child, for example. He didn't celebrate holidays or Christmas or anything like that. So, when people were talking about, oh, remember, did you read that book as a child? He'd be like, well, I had kind of a difficult childhood. That was what he would say as his sort of stock answer. But I don't think people really pictured, especially privileged people like me, they didn't picture the level of difficult childhood that he had. And it came back around. He managed very, very well in his adult life. He had all kinds of things he did to avoid kind of reactivating those traumas. But when he eventually got sick, that became much more difficult.
I mean, it's such a sad thing, but a lot of times, we have cycles of abuse, and we have, people do what they grew up and learned to do. So how was he able to step out of that and not become an abuser himself, or even just drugs or alcohol or all of those things that people used to cope? That's amazing that he was able to break free from such a dire situation.
Or did he have some substance abuse?
Yeah, in his late teens and early 20s, he said he was drinking a lot. I mean, I don't think he was doing any hard substances, but he felt like he was going down a road that he didn't want to go down. And so he said at 23, I made a decision. I completely stopped. I was sober for 8 years. I didn't touch anything with alcohol because I did not want to repeat the patterns of the past. So he was super, super conscious about that. And he created a code of ethics for himself. So, he used to escape to the library when he was a child, and he'd read about knights and all these heroes and people who did good deeds, and that's what he always wanted to do. So he sort of created this code of ethics for himself that he lived by very, very effectively and stubbornly to the moment that he died. He was extremely principled in a way that just, isn't normal, I don't think, for people who've gone through those things. And it was interesting because I used to say to him, you are incredible. Like, he was incredibly handy. He could build anything or fix anything or figure anything out. He was an incredible problem solver. And my father has a PhD in engineering. So, he was way beyond my father. And I used to say to him, like, how do you know how to do these things? And how to be a good husband. Like, he was an incredible partner and husband. And I was like, you didn't have anybody modeling that for you. How did you learn all these things? And he just said, well, I read things in books and I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to be. And I just did those things.
He got to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, he got to the top part without having any of the bottom parts, like a true self-made man. He didn't have anybody propping him up.
And the sad part was he had a lot of shame. Like, he wouldn't tell people about his background. And I used to say to him, like, to me, this is a true survival and hero story.
Mm-hmm.
I would be shouting it from the rooftops because look at all you've survived and look at the incredible person you are. But he always had, I think like lots of people who had difficult times, he carried a lot of shame and didn't want people to know about it. Until he said to me after he died, I was allowed to tell the stories. So I do this with his permission.
Sorry, Michael, that you have died. And thank you for letting your story be told because, man, we all need some inspiration. And that's unbelievable. It reminds me of, do you guys remember a hearing of a book called A Child Named It? And I remember the guy was on Oprah, and it was a similar situation, except for he lived with his parents and the parents were the abusers and locked him in the basement, and it was like horrifying stuff. And he grew up to be somebody like Michael. And I remember the questions that Oprah would ask, like, how in the world are you not perpetuating this?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Michael said to me about children, he said, if we decide to have children, I need to go and get a lot of therapy because, I don't know if I can't do that without a lot of therapy. So it impacted our lives and the decisions that we made sometimes, as did things that I carried with me as well. But, he knew, he was very conscious about trying not to repeat the cycles.
Just the fact that he recognized that, though, is like leaps and bounds beyond some people. Like, before I do this, I know I need help, instead of just pretending that you don't. So you guys had lots of adventures. Things were good during your marriage?
Yep. Yes, very good. Yeah, as I said, we lived on a big country property. I was actually the sick one for a long time. I have this mysterious fainting disorder and I fall over.
She's a fainting goat?
Yes, I am a fainting goat. Exactly. So he was always trying to sort of figure out the solutions to those things and accommodating me and driving me around when I lost my driver's license and all kinds of things. So he was a really good nurse and caretaker for me. And I kept saying to him, you're older. There's going to be payback at some point when you're old and I'm going to have to look after you. And it came, unfortunately, a lot sooner than we expected. But we were having a great life. We had a country property. We had a maple syrup bush. We had a tractor, all the things.
Living the Canadian dream.
Yes, exactly. And then I would be inside reading a book. He was doing all these things.
He was like hitting something outside with like a hoe or like a hammer and like gathering the syrup while watching hockey.
Wearing a flannel and a toque.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I would bring him snacks. By the fire.
This sounds great.
He deserved that life after how his beginnings were. I like this part of the story, but I know I'm not going to like it soon. So All right, what happened?
In 2018, so we'd been married 20 years at that point, and I had just taken very, very early retirement. I was running a business on the side, helping medical students and residents, and we decided that I should try to retire as early as possible because he was older, and we knew we weren't going to have decades together. So the night of my retirement party, he had a very bad cold, and he started talking about a specific spot in his throat that was hurting. Fast forward a few months, and they told him, you have throat cancer. But it's early stage, it's very curable, it's the good kind of throat cancer. So it wasn't a like, oh my gosh, he's going to lose his life. It was more of a, okay, this is a bummer, and he's going to have to go through some nasty treatment, because throat cancer symptoms, side effects are, they affect your speech and your swallowing and his beard. He was traumatized, his beard changed color. And so there are lots of impacts that way, but they were like, we're likely going to cure this. And they did. We had a couple of issues with that because he had to be treated with radiation, which is a mask that goes from the top of your head down over your shoulders. And it's bolted down to the radiation table so that the beam goes exactly where it's supposed to go and doesn't hurt other tissues. But as you can imagine, someone without a traumatic history might have difficulty with being bolted to a table. He came out the first day and he said to me, no, I'm not doing that. There's no way I can do that. I'm not doing the treatment. And we went home and he was absolutely vibrating and didn't talk to me for about 3 or 4 hours. He was so terrified. And then over a couple of days, I said to him, okay, this is early stage. It's treatable. We have to ask them to help us figure this out. And he didn't even know you could do that, and only because sort of I'd worked with physicians for 25 years, I kind of knew some of the things to ask and who to go to. And so he said, I would not do this if it wasn't for you. I want to stay alive for you. So we had a private conversation with the radiation therapist and told them kind of, he needs you to not talk to him at all. And so he had to do the treatment 35 times. And it was absolutely horrendous every single one of the days. It's only like 10 or 12 minutes, but I'd be in the waiting room thinking, this is like 1,000 years, because I know what's going on. And it was kind of another layer of a cancer treatment that nobody knew was happening to us. We were so upset about that because it was so difficult for him to go through that, but that wasn't something we shared with everybody.
Could they not give him some sort of sedation? Or was that not enough?
They offered him sedation because there are people who have claustrophobia who can't do it either. And he said, no way, I can't give up control. I have to be in control. So I'll do the things I need to do, but I just need your help with how to manage that.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody, it's like, we're going to bolt you down and shoot lasers at you. Good. Have fun. Yeah, it'd be hard for anybody, but that's.
Also, you have had humans attack you and abuse you before when you had no control. So no thanks.
Yeah.
But he was cured of that cancer. So we had about a year where we were, going on our boat and tapping maple trees and traveling a little bit and things like that. And then in June of 2020, right at the height of the pandemic, he had a pain in his rib. So he went to Emerge to get an x-ray without me because it was COVID, so I couldn't go in. And they told him he had a mass in his lung. So then he was diagnosed with lung cancer. Again, early stage, which is almost unheard of with lung cancer. But unfortunately, he had an aggressive type of it. So he was diagnosed June of 2020, had surgery in September, and then went through chemo, radiation, because it metastasized to his spine. So he lived about 2 years after his diagnosis from lung cancer and spent the last 4 months of his life in the hospital.
Did you ever think who did he piss off? In the karma game, was he a really bad person in a previous life, or what? Why?
He often said to me, I have all this rage inside me that is, I spend my life making sure it doesn't come out. So, there's a lot of discussion now, I think, about how those things affect your health long term. So who knows?
Right.
But I certainly thought, how unfair is this? why don't I get the cancer? I've had a lovely childhood and a lovely life. It is blatantly unfair. Like, this is not how it's supposed to work.
He has bookended bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you're into shows like this, but did you ever watch the show called The Keepers?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, this part about it has always stuck with me, and it's terrible. It's a terrible show about Catholic abuse.
Really selling it to me.
Yeah, it's like in the crime world, but it's like basically a nun gets murdered, and the nun taught at a school, and then it was found out later. Well, and the nun knew it at the time, but the girls at the school were being abused by priests, and of course, like the priests were also abusing boys at these other schools. Anyway, one of the main people who is alive still, they're trying to solve the murder of Sister Kathy is the name of the lady. There's a whole cover up with Baltimore and the Catholic diocese and all this stuff. But the guy that this one main lady ended up marrying, I think it was like after they got married that she started coming out with like, oh, this stuff happened to me, I think. But he was so mad, the husband, that had nothing to do with the previous stuff. He was so mad, and he ended up dying. I think it was of throat cancer. And the lady said he was always so upset by what happened to me, and he just would say that he would swallow it. And she goes, I am convinced that because he couldn't release his anger and kept it in his throat, that it gave him throat cancer and he died.
Is that a true, like that's a true, like a documentary?
Yes.
It's not
yes. No, it's a documentary.
Wow.
I think it's on Netflix. It's called, if you can stomach it, it's a hard watch. Like, it'll affect you for a long time.
Christine's like, no, I don't need that in my life. I lived part of that.
The true crime obsession people are probably know it, but it's one of the most like effective, I don't know, the most, it affected me for so long and still does sometimes. It's hard. I never thought about that until I watched that documentary. And so I believe it. I 100% believe it.
And I think I said when he was going through his throat cancer, I kept thinking, this is a person with a choking and smothering history. Why does he have to have this kind of cancer and this kind of treatment? Like, why? Why is it so? I mean, there would have been other body parts that would have been problematic too, but it just felt so unfair. And then the last 4 months, he was paralyzed because of a tumor in his spinal cord. So he had to spend the last 4 months in the hospital because he was completely resistant to opioids that they give cancer patients. Like, they just didn't do anything for his pain. And he had a very unusual pain syndrome for like 2 years before he died. So they kept trying all these different really super scary sounding drugs. And then at the end, he had to stay in the hospital because his nursing needs were so high with the medicine and being paralyzed. So that was really hard for me again, because I thought, like, here's a person who wants to die at home, has institutional trauma where he was attacked in the middle of the night, and I can't stay with him every night for 4 months. But it's, so it was, I have felt after his death, I felt really badly about, like, is there something else I could have done? It's hard not to, you do the best you can in the moment, but it's hard not to sort of go back and think, oh, I wish I'd done this or that, to try and make that better. And he was always extremely stoic. He never complained, but I felt really awful about that.
What are you doing to help yourself with this trauma too? Because like, he had the primary trauma, but I feel like you have like secondary trauma from his trauma, like carrying some of that. Like, that's heavy for you too.
Yeah, it is. And actually, it's been 3 years since he died, and I feel like I'm just sort of starting to kind of untangle some of that, because there were so many things happening so quickly. It was like one disaster after another, one crisis after another, and I didn't really have time to process any of it. So I've spent a long time, and I did go to widows groups and grief groups and things like that to try, but everybody else is like, whoa, your story is really heavy. Go away, please.
They like kicked you out. They were like, no, it's too bad.
We're like, come talk to us, please. Tell us more. How can we help you? Just keep talking. Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, the way I've done it, and it's not probably healthy at the moment anyway, is that I've channeled the kind of rage and sorrow and trauma that I got into advocacy work around trauma-informed cancer care. So it's at least I feel like there's some positive thing, not making lemonade out of lemons. I don't like that, but just something that allows me to direct my attention and feel like I'm making a difference for other patients and clinicians. So that's kind
which
of
I think is probably
methodology.
super good because then you get it out of your body,
Yeah.
hopefully.
And I always say to people when I do presentations, kind of every week or two right now to clinicians, so oncology, doctors, nurses, radiation therapists, social workers, everybody in the oncology sphere. So I do a clinician focused one, like, because trauma informed care really hasn't permeated the medical space, at least where I live in Ontario, or even across Canada, actually. It's in the education system, but it's not in the medical system yet, really, very broadly. So the people that listen to that talk are like, whoa, now I understand what was maybe going on with that one patient that I can think of. And when I was doing research about, is there anybody else that's going through this? I found statistics that in Canada, at least, so it's probably similar in the US, that 34% of Canadian adults identify as being survivors of childhood physical or sexual abuse. So I was, obviously I'm privileged. I was startled the number was that high, but that doesn't include other kinds of trauma, like trauma since childhood. So in a cancer center, a lot of your patients are going to be people who potentially have trauma, and not all of it's going to impact their cancer treatment, but it's super helpful to be aware that there might be trauma happening. And so they've been really, really responsive to the talks that I do and the articles that I write and stuff. And then recently I've started doing it as well for patients and families, because I think there are things that they can do that are empowering, if they're in a situation and they just even knowing they can do things and ask for things. And then I give them some phrases that were helpful for us. Like, I'm not a trauma expert. I'm just really coming from my lived experience, but trying to help make a difference.
I have a question. Are you a fan of The Body Keeps the Score, our favorite book?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the sentences that you give people to say when they need to advocate for themselves?
So I think the big thing is that you're allowed to ask for consent or say you need consent before touching you. So please let me know before you touch my shoulder. So things like that, or I need to have the door open, or I need to have the door closed. Michael had situations where he had a thing about paisley from his residential school experiences. So he had a doctor one time come in with a paisley tie.
Oh,
so I was just like
pattern. I was like, Paisley?
like
Who's Paisley?
Yeah, the pattern.
Okay.
So I just said to the doctor, "Is it okay? Could you just button your lab coat up?"
Did you tell him why?
No, I didn't tell him why. He was like, "That's bizarre."
Were the doctors okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, some were, someone. Sometimes I would say he has past trauma. Like, that's all I would say. He has past trauma. Can you do this or avoid doing that? So I say to patients and families, like, think about the things that are potentially activating for you. So Michael had trouble with, luckily his inpatient stay was not at a Catholic hospital where there were crosses on the wall, but he did have to go for testing in hospitals where there were crosses on the wall. And I mean, he didn't go as far as saying, please take that cross down, but it did bother him to be in those environments and be vulnerable in those environments with, a gown on and no clothing and all those kinds of things. So there's small things that I think people who have experienced trauma don't even realize they're allowed to ask about or, seek help with. And for clinicians, the big thing is about asking for consent every single time and a lot more, and explaining everything that's going to happen. So rather than just saying, we're going to put you on this table and bolt the mask down, it's like, first we're going to do this, and then next we're going to do that, and then next we're going to do that, and checking in with them every time so that the patient is sort of consenting along the way and has an idea of what's going to happen.
I feel like the dentist does that.
I was just...
Yeah. And people who do mammograms, I always feel like they're really great at that. Like, I'm going to touch you here. Are you ready? Like, all that stuff is
I
helpful.
just took one of my kids to the pediatric dentist, and the pediatric dentist, the peds people are really good about this because adult doctors, they assume that what's involved because you've been to the dentist before, but they are like every step, like, hey, I'm going to use this and I'm going to touch the inside of your cheek and it's going to feel cold, and then I'm going to do this and it's going to be a little pinch. I mean, they're kind of lying to the kids, so that's maybe not so good, but like every single step. And then I'm going to put this tooth chair on and you're going to bite down on the tooth chair. You know what I'm saying? And we kind of lose that as we get older because...
And I mean, people, I'm sure it's the same in the US, but people in Canada, healthcare providers are so incredibly busy. We have socialized healthcare. We don't have enough staff. It's always shorthanded. I don't want to add more work to their busy
Yeah.
jobs. But I think there are very small, simple things they can change or add that don't take a lot of effort that really make a difference. Because when you're seeing people cumulatively over hundreds of interactions, those small things that are difficult kind of add up. And, even though people are by and large incredibly caring and supportive, it's still helpful to kind of be reminded that just like you put on gloves to draw blood now, every single time you draw blood, just assume there's trauma and you'll do better. I think that's the kind of basic
I was just
message.
thinking we ask a lot of intake information, and that might be something that would be nice to ask too. Like, do you have any history of trauma that we should be aware of? And maybe not the details, but just know that bad things have happened, which maybe everybody would say yes to if it's just like
True.
There's not too many details about it.
Yeah, but is there anything we should know about you that might impact our conversation?
Yeah.
Or this procedure or whatever. So, yeah.
That's interesting for me also as like a professional. I think back about some of the patients that I've worked with and sometimes some of the things that come up and just makes you kind of think about how you do things also. Hopefully I'm not scarring anybody for life.
Michael would be mortified.
Did you tell us what year he died?
He died in 2022, late 2022.
Why would Michael be mortified? He didn't want to share this with people, or
he would just be that no, he said I could share it, but he'd be mortified that people were making a fuss over him, I guess is the way to describe it.
Well, I feel like that's also a trauma response. Yeah. Make yourself small, make yourself unnoticeable. Don't bring attention to yourself, because that never ends well for somebody in his position.
And he was never bitter about having cancer. I was completely bitter about him having cancer, but he was never bitter. He always said to me, actually, I could handle things. I have handled way worse than cancer. I am bring it on. I'm the person who could handle it better than other people potentially. So I'm okay with the fact that I have it.
So would his age group, would he be considered a boomer, like an actual boomer, baby boomer?
The very end, the end of a boomer.
Yeah, I mean, and for people a boomer and a man, it makes sense to keep stuff in and you keep going and you keep doing the things. And then, like Anita said, it's like when you're a victim of something, it's like you don't want attention brought to yourself. And also, what person wants to go around telling details about the kinds of things that happened to him?
How have you got in contact with people, like different clinics, to do your advocacy work? Do you just start calling them, or how have you managed that?
Yeah, so because I worked sort of medicine adjacent for lots of years, I taught in the School of Medicine in the university area that I'm in, so I have contacts there. But I basically reach out and say, here's a bit about the story. Here's why it's important information, and I do this for free, so invite me. It's really not a business I'm trying to build. I have no interest in that. I'm really just trying to get world domination for trauma-informed care. That's my goal.
World domination.
So, yes.
What did you teach?
So I taught career strategies. I was a career advisor for university students, first year to PhD students. And then I worked with medical students because I used to recruit doctors. So I, know the lingo, and I have a bit of a healthcare background myself. So so I've always been sort of skirting along the edges of medical stuff for my whole career.
That's kind of in your intro to us. I was like, that's kind of the odd piece of that story. What's that about? So, but it stuck out to me because I have a daughter who's wanting to go to med school. So I was like, oh, this is a good person to know.
Yeah, as soon as the students found out I was on the medical school admissions committee for 8 years, I was like the career counselor that everybody wanted to see, which is why I started a business, because I just wasn't able to give them the attention that I wanted to give them in my day job. So
it's a whole thing. She's stressful. In her first year of college, and I'm like, are you sure? Do you really want to do that? Because you don't have to, but also if you want to, I want you to do it. But not if you don't actually want to. It's it's all weird. Just all of it. All of life is weird.
And she might decide as she goes along that she feels differently, but
yeah.
Maybe she'll want to be a nurse practitioner instead.
We've talked about that because Sometimes I think that's a better idea. You have so much debt when you go to medical school, and it's like, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
I don't know that it is.
I was constantly trying to talk students out of going to medical school, actually, because partly it's that they know like doctor, nurse, engineer, teacher.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of other career ideas necessarily. And so there are tons of things you can do in medicine that aren't doctor or nurse that are really cool.
I told her she should be a cardiac perfusionist, and she was like,
yeah, that's what I always said to students. It's funny that you picked that one job because that's the one I always picked too.
What is that?
But the school that's close to us takes 8 students per year. So it's like very competitive. It's somebody who runs like a heart-lung machine during surgeries or
surgery. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like somebody might be in the ICU and be on ECMO, which is like a heart outside of your body. And they run that. And it's very hard and it's very technical. You get paid a lot to do it. Yeah. But also you have to be on
they're in
call.
high demand.
So I don't know. Anyway. Okay.
So you do it for free. Do you just do it as you, Christine the person, or do you have a foundation, or how does it have a name?
So right now I just do it as me, the person, which I'm a person who, as you can probably tell by how fast I talk, I like things to happen fast and I can produce things quickly. And so I'm like, hurry up, people. Like I want this to take root faster, but I'm too old to be a social media sort of guru.
She can't do the TikTok dances to the...
No, I can't. And so I've thought about a foundation or something, but my friend who used to work for Oxfam has said, do not start a foundation. Hitch your wagon to another foundation if possible and try to do things that way. Because then you have to set up boards of directors and, corporate tax returns and all kinds of stuff. I do think about it because it's awfully slow, kind of one presentation at a time. Even though I have made inroads into the US now, I don't want it to be contingent on me and surviving. It should survive beyond me.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's just you, that's like you against the whole world.
And you only have so much energy.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Are you trying to gather people to do it in different areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So I think it would be great to have it as kind of like a franchise model, even though it's not obviously a franchise.
I mean, I know this is a cliche thing to say, but you need to make courses.
Yeah.
Bessel van der Kolk has some courses. I'm sure you're on his mailing list. I get those
So
emails.
does David Kessler.
I know.
Even like having some online content that you could share with people would be helpful so that you don't have to be in the room. And maybe you already have some of that, but I would be interested to just look over that kind of thing too. And trade career counseling for a student to make TikToks for you.
That's true, yeah.
She's like,
yeah, I could. Absolutely. And a lot of the times you're dealing with like government corporation, like government offices, which the pace of things is frankly glacial. So yeah, and the kind of corporate structures of hospitals and all those factors that make infiltrating people and kind of moving through that stuff much slower than I tend to usually work. So that's all. It's a good lesson in patience for me.
Who has been giving you support? Like you have this drive to do things, but who is helping you to be okay?
So I don't have children, as I mentioned. So I knew that after Michael died, I was like, okay, you can go down a very big pit of despair here and end up spending 4 months in bed. Like no shame against that. But I just thought, I don't know if I could scoop myself out of that. If I go there, I had to avoid that somehow. So I didn't do much that was productive. I did a lot of staring at the wall and doing like the sadmin stuff, all the deaths admin things.
Wait, did you call it sadmin?
Sadmin.
That's the perfect term.
Yeah. But I do have family who've been really helpful, who were helpful while Michael was sick too, who were really helpful with practical stuff. So, they would bring food and they would help us with specific tasks. They wouldn't ever ask me like, let me know if there's anything we can do, which, is well-intentioned, but not super helpful when your brain is going to explode at any given moment. So they would offer specific help and that was really useful. And then I have a friend who I have lots of friends, but one of my close friends worked in bereavement at the time. So she was sort of like normalizing a lot of the things that I was feeling and crying about. And I just knew, I mean, I knew grief is gonna suck. It's gonna suck. Even though I went through all the anticipatory stuff, it's still so hard when the person dies. And I was really shocked at how shocked I was when he died, because I'd known for over a year that he wasn't going to get better. But so the first like 6 months, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why is your brain not processing this? And there's an author who has two books, Your Body on Grief and Your Brain on Grief. I can't remember, Dr. Mary Jane O'Connor, something like that.
Mary Frances O'Connor.
Thank you.
We have interviewed her, actually.
Oh, cool.
She's my hero. She's so cool.
So reading her neuroscience stuff about how your brain actually is having to make new pathways, I was like, oh, okay. That explains why I feel so unprepared, even though I felt like I was prepared.
Do you do anything for fun? Or is this your fun? Is advocacy?
Yeah. Advocacy is my fun. I do a little bit of traveling. So I used to live in England and Germany earlier a couple times. So I go to Europe, and I went to Paris, and I've done things like that to run away, basically. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that. And then I have lots of interests. So I play the piano and the ukulele and the guitar, all badly, but I used to teach piano lessons. So in the town that I've moved to, I've kind of tried to get involved in some of those activities. And I'm coming to you from my craft closet and / sewing closet, where I have all kinds of things. And Michael was the kind of person who, if I said, oh, those pencil crayons are really cool, I would have every color of pencil crayon in the world on my desk within a week. Had to be super careful about what I said. I would end up with all the things related to that activity, because he always wanted to encourage me. So yeah.
A while back on the podcast, I shared that my youngest son, I made him start taking piano lessons, and he was not thrilled about it, but I want to give you an update. Still not thrilled about it. However, now he is treating it like it is, assignment isn't the right kind of word, but kind of. He's like, okay, I'm going to practice one time in the morning and one time at night, because I have to get so many times done. So I'm going to try and do them all in one day. And he's just gaming the system that way. And we're doing great. He plays the piano like he's got a grudge against the piano.
Yeah, my mom is still mad, like 50 years later, that I taught piano lessons when I never practiced. She's like, you never practiced. How dare you teach piano lessons? I always had to force you to practice. So funny.
Mel, did you just practice? Like, were you just the golden child and you practiced without being...
Yeah, because I loved it. I asked to take piano, but my mom was a piano teacher, so I was around it.
So was mine, and I didn't practice without being cajoled.
You're a little bit stronger personality than I am, I would say. But I didn't realize people hated practicing until I started teaching, and it shook my world. And now my whole life is like, okay, how can I, quote, manipulate these students into thinking it's fun? Not, you know what I mean, in a healthy way.
Yeah, manipulate.
It's so hard. I'm like, this is a psychology degree. This is not music. Good grief.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
now I don't like practicing, though. I hate practicing now. I just want to sit down and play it. Well, so I sight read. But the good sight readers are the ones that don't practice, because they can play it great first few times. So
I never could sight read. Okay. Anyway, so Christine, you have many hobbies that are all inside. Do you still have this big property with the maple bush?
In the last year of Michael's life, when he had this horrible pain syndrome and couldn't do much at all, he wanted to know where I was going to be after. We only ever said after. We never talked about him dying. We just would. He said, where do you want to live after? And there was a small town. I did not want to live on our huge property with a well and a septic system and all that kind of stuff, and all the nature around it. I was like, the nature is not my thing. We sold our giant property with 4 outbuildings in the last year of his life, which was terrible and foolish, and I do not recommend it. But I was so grateful that I was here for the last 4 months of his life in our new house, that I can manage. And he was really happy that he knew where I was going to be and that I could manage it. So, and I
Maybe
was
gave him some peace of
after
mind.
he died, I thought, oh my gosh, I would not have wanted to do all that now, even though it was not great fun while it was happening. I feel like it was the right decision for us. So now I live in a small little town in a small little house.
Perfect for a widow, I would say. That does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I would not want to take care of a well. Are you kidding? I wouldn't even know what to do.
But it was a problem because I love reading, but I couldn't read for like almost 2 years after he
your
died.
brain doesn't work.
Yeah, your brain doesn't work.
Everything's broken.
Can you listen to books?
That drives me crazy. I always have to speed up the speed because I'm like, hurry up, talk faster.
That's so funny. I have a friend who listens to this podcast. Hi, Lisa. And I saw her a few weeks ago and she was like, Anita, I have a problem with you. And I was like, okay, what? And she goes, when I listen to the podcast, I put you on 1.7 speed. And so in real life, could you just talk faster? She's like, I'm used to hearing you talk like a little mouse.
That's what I did. That's what I did with your podcast too. I have to confess. I went faster. Yes.
Christine, what is giving you like hope and joy in your life? Is it advocacy? Is it other things?
That's the honest answer is that I still, and I don't know how long this will go on for, probably a while, or forever. I still am sort of like, I said to my sister, because she's my emergency contact now, like if I break my leg, just pull the plug. I don't know.
If I get a hangnail, just pull the plug. Yeah,
I just pull the plug. So it's not that I want to do something, but I just feel like, if I wasn't here, that would be fine. And I assume that will lessen over time. And I think Michael was someone who never gave up hope, not in a like cheesy, toxic.
No, that guy was tenacious. Like
not a toxic way, but sort of giving up hope was like letting the bad guys win, and he had never let the bad guys win. So the day before he died, he said to me, "There's always hope." They were asking him about if they wanted him to do some procedure on him if it happened, and we could tell he was getting very close to the end, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I want you to do that thing because there's always hope." And he died less than 24 hours later.
Aww.
So he really just never gave up hope. So I kind of oscillate between, okay, I can't give up hope, but also I just keep taking 1 minute at a time, sometimes 1 week, hour, 1 day, 1 week, how it goes, and just keep walking forward.
Thank you for answering that honestly, because a lot of people would think by 3 years you should be okay, or at least partially okay. So I think it's great to just say like, nothing's giving me joy right now. I'm just kind of existing, and that's okay. And I'm like not okay with it, but also okay with it,
And it's hard. I mean, when my dad got cancer 6 weeks after my husband died, and I couldn't even feel it. I thought I should be upset by this. I am upset by this, but I don't feel anything. And the person I want to talk to about it is not here. So that was super, super hard, because the worst has already happened to me. So it's hard to kind of, I know I can handle all the other stuff, but yeah, it's a weird.
But I'd rather not. Also, if I don't have to.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We wish you the best in reaching as many people as you can. Like, good job to you.
And I always like to leave people, because of my sort of crazy, depressing story, I like to leave on a bit of an up note, which is to tell you that Michael wrote me a love note every day of our 25 years together.
Aww.
Again, like, how does he do these things with his background? He wrote poetry and all kinds of stuff. So he always wrote me a love note. And in one of them in recent years, he said, "Life has sometimes dealt me some lousy cards, but I always ended up with a pretty good hand." And, that's emblematic of who he was. So I try to live vicariously through his philosophies.
Yeah.
And
he doesn't seem like a real person. Like, I don't know.
he had things that were annoying too. Trust me.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael, for agreeing to let Christine share your story, even though you're dead now. That's why she's sharing it. But yeah, I think people need to hear it, and it'll help a lot of people.
Thanks so much for having me.
We have one question for you. the question is, what is your favorite cheese?
Oh, it's a toss-up between Applewood smoked cheddar. I mean, cheddar's kind of pedestrian, right?
No.
But it's really good.
Never say that about my cheddar.
I love cheddar.
And I do not like brie, really. I know brie is a popular cheese for people, but I'm kind of like, I'm sort of ho-hum on brie. But yeah,
Okay.
Applewood smoked cheddar is
But
really
you
good.
said it
And
was
there's
a
also, I've gotten
toss-up.
into red Leicester cheese lately. Have you had red Leicester cheese?
Yes, you were like, man, we have a lot of parallels. Yes, that was one cheese that I picked at one of the years of this podcast. And it's like, where did this lovely red Leicester cheddar come from? I didn't know about this. Yeah, so
Came
good.
from Leicester.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for listening today. We hope you have enjoyed Christine's story. If you want to help her get the message out, how can they find you, Christine? Can they?
They could go to my website, which is christinefader.com, Fader. And yeah, then it says invite me.
Okay.
Right
Perfect. We'll put that in our show notes.
So,
Beautiful.
excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing with us today. If you, our listeners, would like to keep the podcast going, will you check out our Patreon? It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos or red Leicester cheese, our favorite, go to buymeacoffee.com/widow. We do now.
And we always appreciate a kind rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Christine.
We are just two young widows and one widow who is the middle of the book, the only happy part of the book for Michael. And we're all just trying to figure out, widow,
We
do.
now.
Mel, can you please tell me how you feel about therapy?
I am so grateful for therapy. I do therapy every single week.
Do you think it's a great tool in the widow's toolbox?
I sure do. I think it's a great tool in anybody's toolbox. And I am so glad that I have stuck with it because as time goes on, there are more things that I am able to learn about myself. That goes for anything from healing from the death of my husband to childhood things to trying to get outside and be social or trying to address my own certain personality. So yeah, it's really been helpful for me.
We have so many people in the Widow Wives Club who have started using BetterHelp and have amazing reviews. It takes away so many of the barriers to getting great therapy.
I know one of the things that's hard for people, and we get this question a lot, it's I need a therapist that does XYZ. Who is a therapist that is going to be widow friendly? And I know that is so hard to find. When I did therapy that was not on this online platform, it was hard. And it's kind of trial and error, kind of like a new medication, honestly, like a new antidepressant. And the way that BetterHelp is set up is it's easy to find somebody that has your specific needs as part of their expertise. And you know what? If you get into a couple sessions with that person and it's not a good fit, it's so easy to change. You can ask some of our friends in the Widow Wives Club. They've changed therapists and gotten one that has been a better fit for them. Well, a lot of them are lucky with who they get first time. I am so grateful for mine. I love her so much, and it's literally changed my life for the better.
This is amazing. So if you guys are wanting to add therapy to your toolbox or need a change in who you're seeing right now, consider checking out BetterHelp. They're one of our sponsors. If you go to trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month of therapy if you sign up with BetterHelp. And let me tell you, the day that I was in the hospital with my dad when he was dying, I was able to instant message with my therapist, and she checked on me all throughout the week. And I was not available for video sessions for a lot of those times because there were things we were dealing with, like mortuary stuff, and I was still able to be in contact with her. So they're very, very responsive, caring. It's such a great platform, and I recommend it to anybody who is looking for therapy.
Once again, it's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
And that's for 10% off your first month of online therapy.
You don't even have to wear pants, Mel.
I know this.
First-hand experience.
You can even wear a onesie.
Or a twosie.
Ooh, scary. All right, bye.